All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're decoding a very specific and pretty tricky kind of language. We're talking about the psychological tactics used during infidelity. Now, based on our source material, we're going to break down the manipulative phrases, the hidden playbook behind them, and probably most important, the one core strategy you can use to counter it all. So let me ask you this. Have you ever asked a partner a simple, straightforward question, and by the end of the conversation, you're somehow the one apologizing? You know that dizzying, disorienting feeling where you're made to feel paranoid or insecure just for wanting some clarity? Well, that is exactly what we're breaking down today. You see, our source material frames these conversations not as, simple disagreements, but as a kind of hidden battlefield. It argues that in these specific moments, language stops being about connection, and it becomes all about control. So what does that actually look like? Well, in this context, psychological warfare is all about using words specifically to make you doubt what you know is true. The goal isn't to solve a problem, no. The goal is to completely reprogram your perception of reality and shift all of the blame right onto your shoulders. Now, what's really key about the argument in this source is that it presents these verbal tricks as a deliberate strategy. This isn't just about someone getting defensive in a heated argument. It's positioned as a conscious, thought-out playbook of tactics, and they're used to maintain control and to dodge any kind of accountability. So, if it's a playbook, what are the actual plays? Well, our source boils it down to two fundamental tactics, and they're both designed to deflect suspicion and shut the conversation down, period. These two tactics really are the foundation of this whole manipulation playbook. They are the absolute go-to moves when someone is faced with a direct question that's, pretty hard to answer honestly. So let's break down exactly what they are. Okay, the first one is called the victim flip, and it is an incredibly powerful move. It's where the person being questioned just flips the entire script. All of a sudden, they're not the one on the defensive anymore. Nope, they are the victim. A victim of your mistrust, a victim of your controlling behavior, your lack of faith in them. You came in with a question, but you've just been recast as the villain. And the second tactic is deflection. Now, instead of flipping the roles, this move changes the subject completely. It's a masterful way to redirect the spotlight away from their suspicious actions and shine it right back on something else, usually one of your supposed flaws. Suddenly, the conversation is about your insecurity, your anxiety, or even your overall mental health. All right, so those are the big ideas, the abstract concepts. But what do these tactics actually sound like in a real conversation? This is where we get into decoding the attacks, and we see how the theory gets put into practice with some very specific weaponized phrases. Let's start with a total classic that this source highlights. You bring up a concern, you point out that something just doesn't add up, and the response you get is this calm, almost concerned sounding, "I think you need help." And boom, that is a perfect illustration of the deflection tactic. The conversation instantly pivots from their behavior to your sanity. Your totally valid concern is just dismissed, not because it's wrong, but because it's now a symptom of your personal problem. It's an absolutely brilliant way to avoid the question while putting you completely on the back foot. Okay, now for the second example. Let's say you ask a simple question, something logistical, like, "Hey, who were you with last night?" And you're met with this immediate counterattack. You're so controlling for even asking that. This right here is a textbook victim flip. Your reasonable question gets reframed as an act of oppression. You're not just looking for clarity, you're trying to control them. And in this new story, they're the victim, just fighting for their freedom, and you're the bad guy trying to lock them down. And notice, the original question is, once again, left totally unanswered. So, when you're faced with this kind of verbal judo, what can you actually do? I mean, when it feels impossible to get a straight answer, our source doesn't just point out the problem, it also proposes a really powerful counter-tactic. And according to the source, you don't actually have to play this game. You don't have to engage in this verbal warfare. There's one core strategy you can use to cut right through all that noise and stay grounded in what's real. It's really a three-step approach. Okay, first, you have to recognize what's happening. See the tactic being used against you. Is it a deflection? Is it a victim flip? Second, and listen, this is the hardest part, you have to emotionally disengage and just ignore the verbal bait. And third, you have to stay, and I love this phrase from the source, you have to stay laser focused on the actions that made you ask the question in the first place. So here's the crucial point. The whole reason these phrases are used is to create emotional chaos, to get you spun up and thrown off track.
The counter move is to just refuse the invitation to that chaos. You don't argue about whether you're controlling or if you need help. You just calmly bring the conversation right back to the observable facts and behaviors.
Ultimately, the core lesson from this material is really about learning to see the difference, to identify the kind of conversation you're actually in. Is this a genuine, good-faith disagreement where two people are trying to understand each other, or is it a strategic game of deflection? Just recognizing that difference is the key that disarms the whole tactic.
And that leaves us with a final question to really think about. In any difficult conversation, when things get really heated, what are you focused on? Are you getting lost in the storm of emotionally charged words being thrown at you? Or are you staying anchored to the observable, undeniable facts?